Roberts Rinehart was considered the American Agatha Christie and a war correspondent in World War I. She popularized the concept of the "if I had known" and as well as "the butler did it." But in 1908, she created a book known as The Circular Staircase, which would then be reproduced into a play in 1920 as The Bat. The Bat was then readapted into a book, which was then created into a silent film by Roland West in 1926, and then Roland West then recreated the film as a talkie in 1930. Now, this film was one of the inspirations for a certain artist who then created one of our most iconic heroes of this century. The story itself features the Bat, who was a villain. That's right, the Bat was a bad guy. He also was someone who used guns. Yep, so he would murder people and would steal from them, but was quite dignified and regal about it, for the fact that he would send a letter to the person prior to the robbery being like, hey, I'm going to come at 12 o'clock and rob your safe in your library on this date. So get out of town or I'm going to take it because I'm going to take it. The story itself is very, mystery-like. Features a spinster woman who's in her 60s, and as well, she's very, she's a great heroine in this. She's stubborn, she's got attitude, you can just love her. When she was a child, she wanted to be a train engineer or just kind of like an adventurer. But because it was 1908, things were limited, unfortunately, to women during that time period. Which also, when you think about a man dressing as a bat in 1908, it's kind of hilarious. So during this time in New York, the police are being baffled by this villain, the Bat. The media loved him, and which the public loved him so much that there was even a fashion craze, and they created these women's stockings in the shade known as the Bat. Miss Cornelia wanted to do something that summer, and she was always up for an adventure. She had already been a suffragette, so she was given an opportunity to rent a property in the countryside. Now, this countryside area was known as a hunting ground for the Bat villain. So she takes up the opportunity to rent this property from a now recently deceased former owner of the Union Bank. So the nephew of the Union Bank rented the property to her. She goes with her niece, and she goes with her only Irish maid. The household staff had all recently quit because they kept seeing faces in windows, and everything was being haunted. There was break-ins. They were terrified. They were like, "There's ghosts everywhere. Oh my goodness, we need to leave." So they all quit, except for the Japanese butler, Billy, who was pretty cool and also would help out with cooking, apparently. So Miss Cornelia receives a letter one day just saying hey, I'm going to come rob you, just so you know. And she's like, yeah, whatever, I'll be here. Do your best. One by one, you get all these characters introduced. So you get this guy who she wants to hire as a gardener, but she's like, you're totally not a gardener. Who are you? And he's like, oh, I'm the lover of your niece. She's like, whatever, just go stay in the servants until I can figure out what to do with you. The doctor also showed up, and this is the doctor who had said that the former owner of the house had been killed and had signed the death certificate. And then we also get the nephew of the former owner showing up, who all of a sudden gets murdered at the house. And because of his murder was the fact that he had blueprints of the house. And what was so great about these blueprints was the fact that they revealed there was a hidden room somewhere in the house, but they had been burnt in the fire because he was burning them while he was murdered. During his murder, a detective showed up, Mr. Anderson. Who was quick to blame the niece, Dale, who had been present during the fact that he had been shot. The doctors also blamed, the butlers also blamed. Another guy shows up who was the driver of the nephew. He was blamed as well. And then we also get an unknown man, and he's identified in the story as the unknown man until later on, who you find out who he is. But he had suffered a concussion being tied up in the garage when they discovered him. Sorry. When all this is kind of being blamed around, so Mr. Anderson is quick to judge everyone in the story, being like, you could have done it, you could have done it, and eventually we discover that, there's another murder. And this is the murder that baffles everyone, because they're like, wait, isn't that the former owner of this house who had mysteriously died 2 weeks before? And they're like, oh, he had faked his death and stole the money from the bank, which had crashed, and he took all the money and hidden it in the house, not thinking that his nephew would rent out the property so quickly. So, the doctor and him were kind of in it, except the fact that he was now murdered. They quickly, when they captured the unknown man, a bit of a scruff goes on, lights go out, and you discover that Mr. Anderson, the detective, is actually not the detective. He is the bat. So the unknown man was really Mr. Anderson. So when the bat, the pretend detective, takes a gun and points it out at everyone, and, everyone's like, oh my gosh, you're about to shoot us because you're known to kill people very quickly. Miss Cornelia is just sitting there like, I'm just gonna keep knitting because I'm a cool old lady in my 60s. And he's like, seriously, put down your knitting needle? She's like, well, you can just get rid of that gun because I got rid of those bullets 2 hours ago when you weren't paying attention in that gun. So in his frustration, he throws the gun at her and she's like, oh yeah? Shh. All the bullets fall out. And she's like, yeah, I totally bluffed you. She was pretty badass, just saying. Like, she knew he was a multiple murderer and yet was totally okay with just screwing with his mind. He gets arrested. The real Miss Anderson takes him in. We never actually learn his real identity. So the allure of the story created, like a passion in Bob Kane, who was the artist who then created our favorite hero, Batman. But yeah, the original Bat was a massive thief/murderer. Yay. But, of course, he redeemed himself in Batman stories. I was recently given this book, and thank you for that. And I would like to say that there's a really cool little thing in the back where a Corporal Jacques, I have yet to track him down because this is a book that used to belong to a library out east. And it was rented in 1943 by the Corporal. So I'm going to see if I can find out what happened to him during the war, if at all possible. But yes, the original Bat story was created by a woman and inspired many generations and many heroes after that. Another neat element that Mary wrote into the story was the fact that whenever the Bat would commit a robbery, he also shone a light which would have the Bat symbol in it. So, definitely something Bob Kane picked up on. So yeah, to Mary and to Bob Kane and to our villain, the Bat. If you want to take a look at some more videos, check out my Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, on here, like and subscribe, and also on my Steam and Patreon. See ya!